Hello, 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 hello. This is Warren Redlick. Thank you all for watching. Hello, hello, hello. I'm going to talk about Gary Black and Ross Gerber, or as I jokingly refer to Barry Glack. But I want to start off by saying I think there's hope. So I've said many times I think people think that I hate them. I'm not terribly fond of Gary. I generally like Ross. I think Ross is a very good wealth manager. I think I am invested in his fund, his exchange traded fund, GK. I think that they went off the rails as Tesla stock came down. And so, but I think that they're trying. I don't think they've fully acknowledged. Certainly, Ross has not acknowledged that he's been wrong all this time. I don't think Gary genuinely acknowledges why they're wrong, what they're wrong about. And I want to break down like what they've been wrong about so far, and then there's some obvious things that have been discussed a lot that they've been wrong about, and there's one big thing that really hasn't been discussed very much. There's one thing that's flaring up today that's obvious, or a couple things that have been flaring up today that have been obvious, and of course, one overhang that's been silly for a long time. But there's one big thing that I'm going to get to in this video. But I just want to, I want to start off by saying I think there's hope. I think there's hope that we can get along. I think there's hope that they can improve, and there's hope that I can improve. We're always wrong. We need to be less wrong. But let me dive into this. I want to start with what got me fired up today to make this video. Is there's this ongoing conversation. Ross's tweet is the one that really triggered it. But you go back a little bit. I think this was yesterday or 2 days ago. Alexandra Mers tweeted and wrote an article about a deep dive into Tesla's board of directors, which I found absolutely hilarious because back in December 8th, I made a video criticizing Gary and Ross for criticizing the board of directors. And this idea that there was a problem with the Tesla board of directors. And I had a tweet thread where I went through board member by board member what their qualifications are and compared them to Gary or Ross or whatever. And I was attacked by Alexandra. I was attacked by Ross and Gary. Their sycophantic followers attacked me. People say there's an Elon cult. There's a Gary cult. There's a Ross cult. I mean, every YouTuber, every personality who does this stuff, every influencer has their own little cult. So I had this endless stream of criticism, from dating from before that. Whenever I dare to challenge the great Gary or the great, not so much Ross. I think most people don't. I don't know why people don't like Ross. I actually like Ross. But whenever I would dare to challenge them or I would criticize Alexandra or Gary or Ross, I get this massive pushback. And by the way, you see that publicly. What you don't see that I do see is I get a lot of DMs from people who are thanking me for my criticism. And despite Alexandra's bogus attack that my follower account and YouTube account are shrinking as a result of all this, that was never true. My YouTube subscribers have grown consistently. Are there ups and downs? Sure, but my YouTube channel has grown. My locals platform has grown really well, and my Twitter following has grown. So no, I mean, there are people who believe in me too much. There's people who believe in anybody too much. It's part of reality. So anyway, I wanted to get to this point about the board first, and this is not the big one. This is just the current one. Is Alexandra has this article up, a deep dive into Tesla's board of directors dated January 26th. Well, Ross and Gary started criticizing the board like a month and a half ago. And I came out and said, wait a minute, and I made my points then, and I went fairly in depth, going through point by point. I said, let's take the board members one at a time, and I asked Ross, who would you remove from the board of directors? Leave yourself out. Who's less qualified than Gary? And he said, all of the above. Who is actually qualified on the board of directors? Who owns shares or represents any shareholders other than Elon? This is Ross in like full-on attack mode. And I never saw any significant criticism from Alexandra or Gary criticizing Ross, because they never criticize each other. They only criticize Elon. They have like a don't touch each other policy. So even in Alexandra's article, there's this quote in here about, the suggestion that Tesla needs a retail representative on the board of directors is inappropriate, but she doesn't name names. She doesn't say Gary and Ross were wrong for saying that, or Kogue and Leo were wrong for needing, like you can read the article for yourself. It's alexandramers.substack.com. She has some useful insights. I'm not trying to say she's totally worthless or anything like that, but you can read this and you can ask yourself, well, why didn't you say this on December 8th? And why don't you name Gary and Ross in your criticism of people saying we need a retail representative on the board of directors? So I just want to go through really quick. This was my question. Let's take them one at a time. And I went through Robin Denholm's the chair of Tesla's board, CFO, COO experience in the past. She was at the shareholder meeting and spoke about the goal of delivering 20 million vehicles. I specifically remember because I was at the shareholder meeting. I was at the shareholder meeting, and I specifically remember her talking about Tesla's long-term goals. Because this is what the board of directors is really focused on. They're not focused on short-term stock price. They're focused on the Tesla mission and the long-term goals of Tesla, something that Gary and Ross don't understand. Ross understands it a little. I think Ross generally has a better understanding of Tesla's long-term goals, and I think he just flipped recently. I'm not convinced that Gary has any thought about Tesla. I think Gary would, well, look, Ross invests in casino companies, and I think Gary would invest in tobacco stocks if he thought he'd make money on them. Like, I'm invested in Tesla because I love the company and I love the mission, and I do believe it's going to grow crazy, but I don't tend to invest in companies I don't believe in. And Ross has no problem investing in casino companies, and my best guess would be that Gary, if he had the opportunity to invest in a tobacco stock and thought he could make money on it, he would. And that's not me. By the way, family history, not me, family history of tobacco, tobacco causing problems, health problems, and casino gambling problems in my family. So I'm particularly chapped about those. But, I still think Ross is a good person. I still think he's a good wealth manager. Anyway, so, Robin Denholm has this spectacular experience, and Gary, and I picked on Gary here because at the time, I think the pitch was for Gary to be on the board. This is December 10th, 2022. It shifted to Ross being on the board. I could make the same criticisms of Ross that I make of Gary here. Gary has zero experience outside of the investment world. What experience does Ross have outside of the investment world? Robin was executive experience at Sun Microsystems in Toyota, Australia. Do you think that, Sun Microsystems, for those who don't know, is or was a important computer company in the history of Silicon Valley's, sort of like not mainframes and not personal computers, but sort of mid-level computers that were heavily used by corporations. Juniper Networks is sort of like a Foundry Networks Cisco competitor. She's got great experience. Ira Ehrenpreis awarded NACD Directorship 100 as one of the most influential leaders in the boardroom and corporate governance community, impact investing venture capital firm managing more than $1 billion. And Gary has zero board experience. Now, to be fair, Ross is a wealth manager, manages, I think, $2 billion in wealth. So Ross has some qualifications there, but it's not venture capital. See, so Ira has this, number one, he's got this influential leader in the boardroom designation, award or whatever. But he's also, he's investing in venture capital specifically, where Ross does broader wealth management. So, Hiro Mizuno, UN Special Envoy on Innovative Finance and Sustainable Investments, Executive Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer of Japan's government pension fund, the largest pension fund in the world. It gets better, because remember, Ross said all of them need to go, right? He wants to bounce the Japanese guy who was head of the largest pension fund in the world. James Murdoch, CEO and COO executive in multiple companies, served on several corporate boards. Lots of experience with media Murdoch has, and then here's the rest of them. Kimball Musk. Ross is still after Kimball. And I'll say this, Kimball knows more about Tesla when he's sleeping than Gary and Ross will ever know. Kimball was at the company from the very beginning, has significant board experience, including at Chipotle, started up multiple restaurants, tech companies. What real world experience do Gary and Ross have outside of the investing world? Kimball has real world experience outside the investing world, and Kimball was there at the beginning of Tesla. Kimball was there all the way through. If you're looking for somebody who understands the mission, good luck finding somebody who understands the mission better than Kimball. And then you've got this point that this is one of those things that people don't really think about, that I think I'm correct on, and I could be wrong. Elon owns his stock in Tesla through the Elon Musk family trust. If Elon were to die, who do you think would be in charge of the Elon Musk family trust? Who do you think he named as his trustee? It's obviously going to be Kimball. I mean, I suppose it's possible it's going to be somebody else, but if Elon dies or becomes disabled or whatever and somebody takes over his stock, Kimball's probably managing the stock. Kimball, to me, Kimball is the most likely CEO to if Elon, if there needs to be a replacement CEO, it's most likely Kimball. And I know I did a video about this, and I think Drew Baglino would be great, or maybe Kimball would be acting CEO, but Kimball knows the company in depth better than just about anybody in the world, except maybe Baglino, maybe Kirkhorn. There's probably 5 or 10 other people inside Tesla who know it as well as Kimball does, but Kimball very clearly knows the mission. Kathleen Wilson Thompson, high-level HR and operations experience with multiple companies, including Walgreens and Kellogg. And I think one person named her when I brought this up, and she's the person of color, right? They want to balance the black woman, right? Joe Gebbia co-founded Airbnb, a revolutionary tech company. I jokingly said Gary stayed in a Holiday Inn once. And I asked Ross to pick one you'd replace with Gary, and Ross said most of them. And I think at the beginning he said all of them. All of the above. Who's actually qualified? He's knocking the entire board of directors. So this is the first thing that I think Ross and Gary got wrong that stands out the most, that's the most glaring right now. And even Alexandra now acknowledges a month and a half late, but she now acknowledges without saying their names that Ross and Gary were wrong about attacking the board of directors. And fundamentally, to me, the attack on the board of directors was really an attack on Elon. And Gary will say it's not an attack, and he gets offended that I say it's an attack. It's an attack. Ross recently said that the board of directors was asleep at the wheel, and I challenged Gary, isn't that an attack? And they won't take shots at each other. They won't criticize each other. He won't acknowledge that Ross is wrong for saying that the board of directors is asleep at the wheel. And, when I did my video or my tweet, Tesla was trading like $170 a share, and it was on the way down. The stock had been falling for weeks. And I still defended Tesla's board. And Alexandra, now that the stock is on its way up, all of a sudden the board's okay. Like all of a sudden she's out there like making an extensive article. Like, where were you a month and a half ago? Shooting at me. So that's one point that I just wanted to lay out, was one of the big things they got wrong. And again, not the most important thing they got wrong. The other big one that stands out to me is the share buyback. I don't care. I'm a long-term investor. Share buybacks have no significant value to me. I don't understand why anybody thinks this is important. Share buybacks are unimportant. They don't matter. Is there some value for share buybacks in some way in managing the company's finances? Sure. But I want Tesla to have a big cash pile to weather the storm of this recession that we're in. And, if the recession is worse, I want them to have that cash available. I don't want them to announce a share buyback and commit themselves to spending $10 billion on share buybacks, which is, I think Gary's position is, $10 billion over 3 years or something like that. I don't want them to commit their cash when there's other things they might do that are more important with their cash. Like, for example, a large expansion of Giga Nevada, which they just announced. Like the 1 million square feet of space they leased in Houston, which is probably going to be something useful and probably going to require a lot of capital. And the next Gigafactory, and the next Gigafactory, and the lithium refinery, and lithium mining that they might do in Nevada. There's all these things that Tesla can use that, and maybe an acquisition. Like maybe there's a mining company they can pick up for $10 billion, and they could pay cash if they have the cash. They can't pay cash if they don't have the cash. If you put stress on the cash pile, it's a problem. So I'm not saying a share buyback is inherently a bad thing. I'm not saying there's never a time for it. It's just not something that's going to move the stock. It's not, and it's not important for the long-term mission of Tesla. This is what fundamentally Gary in particular, and I think Ross to a large extent lately, don't get, is the board of directors' job isn't to manage the short-term share price. It's to support the company's mission and to support the long-term interests of shareholders and the company. Not to, manipulate the stock on the short term, which is what Gary and Ross are talking about. That's not their job. That's not their focus. And I want to be direct about this. I'm going to talk about this more in tomorrow's live stream. Right now, as I look at the future of Tesla over the next year, I'm pretty optimistic, and I think Gary might be making a good call with this price target of 370 for the end of the year. I think 6 to 12 months, he says. But if the recession's really bad, if things go poorly, if there are problems, if there's a force majeure event, I think there's a significant chance Tesla stock could drop as low as $60 a share. So I want to say this right now. If you buy stock on margin, don't. Like, not financial advice, but don't play games with margin. And I'll say this, I didn't find the tweet. I didn't look for the tweet for this purpose, but there's all these theories about why the stock fell. And the Gary Ross theory is, oh, Elon bought Twitter. Elon had mean political tweets, blah, 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 blah. All BS. Look, it's Elon's position, and I think this makes the most. And I'm not claiming I understand short-term stock price movements. I just want to be very clear. I do not claim to be able to predict or explain short-term stock price movements. I can offer my shot at it, and you can take it for what it's worth. I think Elon is roughly correct that macro issues like the Fed raising interest rates caused some downward movement in the stock. I think people like Ross and Gary shit-talking Elon and shit-talking Tesla when they weren't happy about some things probably didn't help, but were probably insignificant. It's just when the Fed raised rates and other problems appeared in the economy and there's recession and there's all these other issues, the stock started to dip. And maybe it was the Shanghai lockdowns, or I don't remember exactly when the stock started falling, but all those things coming together, the stock started going down. What made the fall of the stock worse, again, opinion, and I'm completely unqualified to offer this opinion, what made the stock fall worse was people who had bought on margin and faced margin calls. And all of a sudden, there's this intense pressure to sell on people who are at or near their margin calls. And I don't understand the options market, but apparently there's some issues that come up with options as well that can force people to sell their stock. So that selling pressure exacerbated the decline. It's kind of like when there's a short squeeze and the shorts have to cover and they have to buy stock. Same thing with margin buying. People have to sell stock and they're forced, and there's this selling pressure. And one of the things I predicted was once we get past the bottom, and I didn't claim to know where the bottom was, once the stock started going up, the selling pressure's gone. Whatever buying pressure is there, but the selling pressure is gone because nobody needs to. Once the stock starts going up again, nobody's getting pushed to sell on margins or options. So so far I've been correct. I'm not claiming I was right. It turns out that rough prediction was correct. That once we cleared the dip, once we cleared the bottom, the stock went up fast. And that's consistent with the margin selling pressure theory. And it's not consistent with Elon being CEO of Twitter, Elon doing political tweets, Tesla not having, I'm going to get to this later, but Tesla not having PR advertising, Twitter overhang, yada, yada, yada. None of that is consistent with the stock going up now. Well, if Elon was causing the stock to fall before, he continues to run Twitter, he continues to engage in political tweets, Twitter Files is raging, he's still doing Twitter File tweets. Twitter Files are releasing documents, emails and stuff from Twitter's files that show political misbehavior, particularly by the Democratic Party, and relating to that strange public health issue that I won't get into for fear of YouTube censorship. Somebody just mentioned this, so I might as well fire it up there. Oh, yeah. You can buy the Barry Glack overhang t-shirt at elonbits.com. I'm trying to be softer on Gary and Ross, but I still think this is hilarious. Mine will be arriving soon, so I will be wearing this on a video soon. I think it's early next month. I'll be wearing the Barry Glack overhang t-shirt. And check out the Tesla Man t-shirt as well. That's a totally awesome t-shirt. The Tesla Man t-shirt on elonbits.com. Like Superman logo, but with a Tesla logo in the place of the S. So the share buybacks, none of that. And so Ross has been pushing this public relations thing. Gary was pushing the public relations thing endlessly. Tesla has no Elon is the PR. Got 127 million followers on Twitter. Tesla has however many followers on Twitter. When he tweets something, it gets news attention. Elon is the PR department. And then, I'm the PR department, and Rob Maurer's the PR department, and Stephen Mark Ryan's the PR department. There's a bunch of us who are out there fighting for Tesla, and, we're to some extent the free PR department. There's no, look, they made a decision, I don't know, 2+ years ago. Maybe it's 3 or 4 years ago now. PR department isn't adding value, we'll axe it. Pretty much no evidence that the PR department adds value. It's just Ross and Gary living in this strange world where they believe this stuff matters. Ross is pushing advertising now. Advertising does not matter. It's comical. You have the Super Bowl ads for other EVs, and that causes a spike in searches for Tesla. And then people say there's brand damage. Well, the brand is so strong that when Cadillac advertises an EV, people start looking up Tesla. The brand damage is not, I don't even have it on my list. Brand damage. They're pushing this brand. That's a fairly recent thing with this Morning Consult survey. they're just like so obsessed with it, and they hang on they hang on their idea, their concept. They have to be right. They can't acknowledge they were wrong. They can't acknowledge that Elon was correct all along. It has to be that they were correct. And the comical thing is, if I criticize them, like this video right now is going to be considered divisive. I'm dividing the Tesla bull community. But when they attack Elon, that's not divisive. This is all part of Alexandra's game. And look, I'm gonna if it's okay for Barry Black or for Gary Black or Ross Gerber to criticize Elon, it's okay for me to criticize Gary and Ross. If that's not acceptable to you, we're just not playing the same game, and we're not one community. I want to stress this: we are not one community. I am a part of the community that looks for Tesla to succeed in its mission, to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, and to grow massive long-term value for shareholders and come out with awesome products that make the world a better place and make life better for humanity. That's the community that I'm a part of. I'm not part of a community that thinks Elon is doing a crappy job managing the short-term share price. That's not my community. So, and I am wearing the Tesla Air t-shirt. That's also at elonbits.com. Check out the Tesla Air t-shirt at elonbits.com. This is one of the most popular shirts. The Barry Black overhang shirt hasn't been there that long, so it's not that popular yet, but maybe there's hope. The Tesla Man shirt, I think, will be very popular. I'm hearing a lot of positive things about the Tesla Man t-shirt, and I like the Tesla Man t-shirt in the royal blue premium. I think it is the most faithful to the Superman concept, but this is a tri-blend blue. If you try it in that, it's pretty good. I ordered the premium. This is a better workout shirt, and the premium shirts don't handle sweat as well. So, the Twitter overhang, I got to pop up the Barry Black overhang. The Twitter overhang, we can thankfully say that the stock having risen, the Barry Black overhang is lifted. Maybe I need a Barry Black overhang lifted t-shirt. All right, so let me talk about the thing. This isn't going to be a super long live stream. I'm going to go to the chat in a minute. And by the way, there's a full live stream tomorrow where I'm going to dive in depth on Tesla's Q4 and what it means for 2023 and what it means for the long-term future of Tesla. That's big tomorrow, and I'm very excited about doing that tomorrow. But I wanted to stress there's one particular thing that I feel did not get as much attention that needs to be understood, that demonstrates that Ross and Gary and a lot of the critics about the short, and Kogwan Leo and others, a lot of the critics do not understand Tesla, the company. And this is why it's important to not just listen to Elon, read Elon's tweets. It's important to not just watch Wall Street analysts, but to listen to people like Drew Baglino, to watch channels like The Limiting Factor. My favorite channel, just to be clear, I'm consistently endorsing my favorite channel on YouTube is The Limiting Factor. If you're not watching it, watch it. But listen to James Dauma on Dave Lee's channel. If I can get James Dauma on again, James Dauma just did an interview with Ryan Tanaka. That was more about Neuralink. If you dive deep on the tech, you dive deep on what the company is actually doing and what the challenges the company's facing actually are. This is where the big mistake was that I think a lot of people didn't get. Ross and Gary, and I think it was Gary in particular, were saying Elon needs to get out of Twitter and get back to Tesla and get in the factory and get the $25,000 to $30,000 model going and get Cybertruck going. Like somehow Elon being involved with Twitter is stopping Tesla from producing Cybertruck and producing this $25,000 to $30,000 car. So the first thing is there's no $25,000 to $30,000 car. Tesla has never said, they did say they were going to make a $25,000 car at Battery Day. They never said a $30,000 car, and there already is a $30,000 car. Model 3 in China is selling for just over $30,000. So, but in the Q3 call, I thought Drew Baglino was clear that the next vehicle, the next generation vehicle that they are working on, is going to be half the cost of a Model 3 or Model Y, which I think in China, the cost of Model 3 and Y is somewhere under $40,000. I think maybe $36,000 or maybe even $32,000. The average selling price of all vehicles, they just had a conversation about this, is closer to $40,000 right now. But that includes S and X. And that includes higher end versions of the Model Y and the Model 3. So if you're going to the base Model 3 or the base Model Y, and I mean the base Model Y in China, or I think that their cost of manufacturing the next generation vehicle is going to be $16,000, and it's going to be a $20,000 car. It might even be an $18,000 car. The next generation vehicle might, My speculation, I think I'm much more reliable than Barry and Ross on this. The next generation vehicle is going to be a Corolla killer, right? Model 3 is basically a Camry killer, and the next generation vehicle is a Corolla killer. I think there's going to be more variants than that, but I think that's the big swing. And you don't kill a Corolla with a $30,000 car. You kill a Corolla with a $20,000 car, an $18,000 car. Corolla being one of I think the best-selling vehicle in the world. So the problem with this demand, the mistake that Ross and Gary made that reflects that they don't understand the company, is the idea that somehow Tesla's going to start producing additional vehicles. Where are the batteries coming from? Tesla does not. First of all, you can't produce Cybertruck without 40. The plan is that Cybertruck is going to have 4680 cells. You can't produce Cybertruck without sufficient 4680 cells. They're not producing nearly enough volume for Cybertruck of the 4680 cells. And the next generation vehicle is going to require a huge volume of batteries. And Elon talked about this in the Q4 call. There was a question about it. He talked about this. If we come out with another model, we have a set amount of batteries. We just have to switch around our batteries. And then you don't get the economies of scale of massively increasing the volume of Model Y if you have to make fewer Model Ys in order to make this other vehicle. So there's been talk about the battery supply is now sufficient, and it's not a constraint. It's not a constraint on their current plans. If all of a sudden they wanted to make 1 million Cybertrucks at 150 kilowatt hours a vehicle, yeah, there'd be a battery constraint. You can't just wave a magic wand and poof, we got new vehicles. You have to have the batteries to put in them. And I just want to mention really quick, I think there's this idea that Tesla's late on their battery numbers on 4680. And it was, if you go back to battery day, I didn't screenshot this, but if you go back to battery day, they said 100 gigawatt hours in 2022 and 3 terawatt hours in 2030. I don't know if they said it would be 100 gigawatt hours of 4680 cells and 3 terawatt hours of 4680 cells. I think they may have meant total batteries used by the company. I may be charitable here. I may be being overly kind to Tesla on this, but I think they did use just over 100 gigawatt hours in 2022. So they are on pace. And if they're going to use 3 gigawatt, in my battery revenue model, the latest version of it basically assumes that Tesla will produce products containing 3 terawatt hours of batteries. So if the goal is to be 3 terawatt hours in 2030, and it starts with 100 gigawatt hours in 2022, I think they did about 107 gigawatt hours. My rough estimate is 107 gigawatt hours in 2022, 100 gigawatt hours for vehicles and 7 gigawatt hours for energy storage. So I think they're doing great there. So that's the big one that I think they missed. And I just wanted to cover that if you're going to criticize Tesla and you're not going to play these short-term games, you got to look at what is the company trying to do for the long term. What is the technology? What are the technology challenges? And, I think Ross even criticized the price cut, not understanding that the goal, Tesla's long-term revenue is driven by FSD. Tesla's long-term revenue and profit is driven by FSD. And I'm even going to pick on Omar's blog on this one, that I had said at one point, this was like I don't think this was public. This was I don't think this was on Twitter. I think this was just a conversation in a Clubhouse room or Twitter space or something. That once they flick the switch, and FSD becomes hugely popular and half the people who already own Teslas decide, okay, I want to buy that now. That's a revenue stream. My rough estimate is $80 billion and it's all profit. And Omar said, no, it's not all profit. And Elon actually said, yeah, it is in the Q4 call. So I love Omar, just to be clear. Omar picks on me and I'm going to pick back on him once in a while, but I absolutely love Omar's blog. Highly recommend following him and listening to him. He's generally speaking, he's absolutely brilliant. But I got him on this one, I think. So, all right, let me look in the chat and see what people are saying in the chat. Delete that. What do we got? Will Gen 3 be robo-taxi exclusively, from Steve Tisdale? This is in the chat. I think long-term, the Gen 3 vehicle will be exclusively robo-taxi, but I believe in the short term, there will be versions of the Gen 3 vehicle that will have a steering wheel and pedals for markets that do not allow robotaxis, or robotaxi isn't ready yet. I heard from a source that they're planning on selling that vehicle in India with a steering wheel and pedals. How reliable this? I mean, the source is very reliable. Whether the source was correct is another question, but it's a source I genuinely trust. Do we know how Tesla is going regarding the dry cathode process for 4680? There is a building being built Um, it on the Giga Texas property that's known as the cathode building. And there's other stuff that's being built up around it. So I believe the dry cathode process is going to be done in that building. That I think the next generation of 4680 cells is going to be dependent on Tesla producing their own cathode material in their own facility. Jupiter James, Q3 2021 conference call was a big red flag. Elon categorically said they are not working on a $20,000 Tesla. Since then, Vieca said they're working on a robotaxi platform. I think the point was that they weren't working on a $20,000 vehicle yet. That they weren't working. I don't know if they called it a $20,000 Tesla or the Tesla Compact or whatever. They were focused on Model Y, and that vehicle that's coming was sort of on the drawing board, but they weren't getting serious about it yet. And thank you, Mark Plott, for and thank you for Mark Plott and Mark Potashnik for moderating this video as usual. I'm just looking at the chat here. Let's see. Tell them how much you hate Twitter on Twitter. Yeah. Chicken Genius was not correct. Ken One says Chicken Genius was correct. Chicken Genius was not correct. Chicken Genius called a dip. He called the level of the dip wrong. He sold before he got to the level he was calling. It fell significantly further than what he predicted. Chicken Genius also got, what is it, FTX or whatever, the Sam Bankman-Friedman. Chicken Genius was lucky in a sense, but not correct. John Bay says, come on, man, where's the love for knowing that Tesla is just a car company? I do think that Gary and Ross do treat Tesla a little bit too much like just a car company. I think Ross is a little better on that than Gary. And I think Gary's getting better. Like, Gary has started to acknowledge Tesla Energy. Tesla Energy, was it? It's like 5% of revenue. I think it's about 5% of company revenue, and it's like 2% of company gross profit for the year. I think Tesla Energy is going to be really important in the next few years. It's going to grow really fast, and it's going to matter. Brian Roshetsky says, are they going to reduce things in the motors like magnets and other parts that will make the overall car cheaper because Elon said the cars have too much performance? I think that the robotaxi platform vehicle or the Gen 3 vehicle, and Elon said this, will be optimized for a cost per mile, not for performance. I'm sure they will still perform reasonably well. I don't think you're going to see a performance version of it, but you never know. So I do think that they are finding efficiencies, and I think Tesla motors are already very efficient, and they're already very low cost to manufacture. They've already got their manufacturing down. They manufacture in huge volume. So let's see. There should be a discussion of something called detonation rotation engines, something PESA engineers developed and has been widely explored for use in aviation in general. Detonation rotation engines. Actually, I'm going to talk about, I don't want to get into that. I'm going to talk about Tesla's future product roadmap on the next video, tomorrow's live stream. A 10 billion buyback for a 600 billion market cap is dumb use. That 10 for building the business. Yeah, Bob, I agree that, whatever Tesla, I don't know whether Tesla's a $600 billion market. I think when they started whining, it was a $1 trillion plus market cap. The buybacks have basically zero effect. And there's actually, I should mention another thing I believe they've got wrong and they're still getting wrong. There's this very popular idea that Elon sold $44 billion of Tesla stock at a bad time. I think if you look at when he sold the stock, a big chunk of that was 44 billion shares, or I think it was $44 billion in stock, but a big chunk of that was early on before the stock started falling. Because I think I saw somebody say it was over an 18-month period. Well, the stock wasn't falling in the 18 months. The stock didn't fall for all of 18 months. Stock started falling about a year ago. And if you look at how much he sold and you compare it to total volume of total transaction volume over the time, Elon's sales were less than 1% of shares. So the idea that that had some huge impact on the stock is silly. John Bay says Tesla stock is a great deal at twice the price. I think Tesla stock is a great deal at $500 a share. I mean, I still look down the road. And we're going to be talking about this more tomorrow. When you look down the road at where Tesla's heading and some of the things they're talking about doing and some of they're just look at the battery revenue model. Tesla's going great. The stock is going to go way, way up. But Did I sell my house yet? No. We got word from a realtor that we may be getting an offer, but we don't have the offer yet, so I don't know. We've had some showings, but so far no offers. No. Uh, Warren is more active for live streams. Good job, old man. Going to do like nag. Thank you, John Bay. Yeah, please like this video, share it, subscribe, all the other important stuff to do. Of course, please go to elonbits.com and buy t-shirts like the Tesla and Air t-shirt and the Barry Glack overhang t-shirt. And please support me on the Locals platform. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing my regular Sunday live stream from noon to 1, and I have a lot of material. I'm very unlikely to finish. And what I've been doing is I do an hour live on YouTube, and then I switch to doing the next rest of the video or a different video on the Daily Live, which is warrenredlick.locals.com. Link in the description below. I'll be doing that tomorrow. And I think if you're in, I don't always talk about Tesla in the second live stream, but I'm very likely to talk about Tesla in the second live stream. The second live stream tomorrow, which will be 2 p.m. Eastern. The media does ignore SpaceX. I think, fundamentally, just getting to the point of this video, the fundamental thing that Gary and Ross got wrong is never bet against Elon. Elon is the core of Tesla. And to suggest that Elon is not fully committed to Tesla is unwise. And to suggest that Elon is not making good decisions in running Tesla is just unwise. Who are you? What makes you think you're qualified to make those statements? The board doesn't know what they're doing. Who are you? What makes you qualified to make those statements? Steve Tisdale says, Warren and I have some things in common. Same age from upstate New York, live in Florida now. Mother's same age. Rest in peace. Thank you. Claims to be an ass. I'm not. Can you put nipples on that t-shirt? Maybe it looks like small moons. I don't know. We pull it in. I don't think the nipples are showing. Sorry. I guess I need cold weather or something. Pepsi Man. Yeah, Koguan Leo to me is just not. He's so random, and people mention Tesla economists. They're so random. They're so unbalanced. It's not worth talking about. Shouldn't we have a Goss Rubber? I don't know. I don't think the Goss Rubber one rings as much. I'm a little fringe. Yeah, well, no, demand was always there. Lenny says all it took was a price reduction for demand to shoot up, and Ross is saying they should have done advertising instead of a price reduction. This was a massive price reduction. I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't fully appreciate how big the price reduction is. The Model 3 standard range is now price competitive for people who are eligible for the tax credit. The Model 3 standard range is now price competitive with a Toyota Camry V6. Like roughly the same price with massively lower total cost of ownership. The Model Y long range is now price competitive with the luxury, the higher end versions of the Toyota Highlander. I mean, they've gone from competing with luxury cars to competing with mainstream cars. On price, dead even with the tax credit. Tesla brand power is similar to that of Apple's, maybe stronger. I don't know. Tesla has a very strong brand. I think it still takes time globally for the brand to reach that far. I think Tesla's brand is very, very strong. And you can see it in the fact that young engineers want to work. Young engineers want to work at Tesla and SpaceX. I was just talking to a guy 2 or 3 nights ago. He's an engineer for a defense contractor here in the Melbourne area. And I was asking about SpaceX. He said SpaceX doesn't pay enough. That they pay a lot less than competing companies. And what happens is Tesla and SpaceX successfully recruit workers because they believe in the mission, and also they get stock, and that they expect that stock to grow in value. Although he said that SpaceX employees don't get stock. I don't know if that's true. I think SpaceX employees do get stock. If you know the answer to that, please put it in the comments, in the chat. Brain damaged. Brain damaged because a mind is a terrible thing. The Wiz says you guys aren't PR drops, you're t-shirt salesmen. I talked to Steven about t-shirts, and we both don't sell very many t-shirts. I like to pump them. I love the shirts myself, but not that many people buy our shirts. You'd be surprised how little money we make on our t-shirts. I had one good month, like February of 2021, where I made like $800 on t-shirts, but a typical month I make less than $100. And I think Steven maybe makes a little bit more than that because he has a bigger channel. We don't make a lot of money on shirts. I genuinely love the shirts. I genuinely wear them all the time. Tesla Air shirt, the Tesla's the next Tesla shirt. One of my favorites is the Discriminate Cogitandi shirt, which is Latin for critical thinking. I love the shirts. So, um, Brooke Chen says, I think Ross was just not supportive of Musk buying Twitter. Ross has been critical of Elon in so many different ways for months. So I don't think so. Brooke Chen says, no debate with Gary Black in the future. Gary has never agreed to come on my channel. We've never arranged to. We did have a brief. We had a back and forth on a Twitter space about Gary's fund. I would love to have a conversation with Gary, but I think that fundamentally Gary doesn't like having conversations with people who ask him really tough questions, and people go deep. And I would just ask him, like I would ask you guys this question. Have you ever seen a moment where you thought that Gary Black understood the difference between lithium iron phosphate and nickel cobalt aluminum and nickel metal nickel manganese cobalt? Do you think he genuinely understands why lithium iron phosphate matters for the future of the world and for the future of Tesla? Do you think he understands the manufacturing advantages of 4680 cell production? I've never gotten the sense that Gary knows anything about this stuff or has any interest in that stuff. It's not his thing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're going to be analyzing a company that is changing the world with its technology, I think you should dive deep and understand the technology. And I've never gotten the sense he understands it. So, yeah, and I don't thank you, Steve Tisdale. Steve Tisdale says, I'm glad Warren stays true to who he is, calls it like he sees it, and doesn't cave to this pressure to be nice. I don't think he's being mean at all. Well, I think I can be a little mean. I think the Barry Black overhang T-shirt is a little mean. It's a little mean, but it's funny, and people think it's funny. And this is the thing: I can laugh at myself. People make fun of me, and I can laugh at myself. If you like, I just did a Twitter poll about what do I understand the least, and women is winning. And people make fun of my line dancing and stuff. And I think you got to be able to laugh at yourself. And I've never seen Gary or Ross able to laugh at themselves. That they, if you can laugh at yourself, you can take criticism. If you can't laugh at yourself, you can't take criticism. Gary is a money guy, not a tech person. Yeah. Jim Cook says, after that conversation with Black, he seems like he has toned down his criticism of Tesla. Yeah, and I think there's a history here. There's a history of Alexandra in particular demonizing me and saying, that I'm divisive, whatever. And there's this idea that my criticisms of Gary and Ross don't have any substance, but they never addressed the substance of my criticism. They just said mean Warren, bad Warren, Warren's mean, Warren's not nice, Warren's divisive. And when we actually had a conversation about Gary's investment in his company, Future Fund Advisors, I asked substantial questions, and they chose to answer them. And I think they recognized, oh, wait a minute, those were good questions. Now, did they know in advance that Warren asked good questions? I think so. I don't know why they honestly did that. I think there was an effort to sort of like end the divisiveness, but I don't care about divisiveness. I don't think that's significant. I don't think we need to be unified. We certainly do not need to be unified in criticizing and saying Elon's doing a crappy job running Tesla. We don't need to be unified saying the Tesla team is doing a terrible job. We don't need to be unified saying the Tesla board is asleep at the wheel. I don't need to be unified with that. I am happy to be divisive when it comes to accusations that Tesla's board is asleep at the wheel or that Elon isn't doing his job right. I'm happy for that. And Jupiter James says, Alexandra is a pretender, got famous for the Moody's rating, and that's it. No other insight since. Was it Moody's or was it S&P? And, the thing is, that was supposed to move the stock up, and it didn't. That was one of the claims. That's one of the things they got wrong, was when we get investment grade credit rating, the stock will go up. And then they got the investment grade credit rating, the stock went down. What do I think about whose fund now? Corolla is a $27,300 car. I don't think Corolla costs that much. I think we have some trolls in the chat. Another stupid idea going to Mars. Ha ha ha. Okay. I think it's the most amazing thing in the world. Should have a hinge spot between the over and the hang with the hang part tipped 45 degrees down. Well, Mark Wick, you've now auditioned for being the chief designer for Warren's t-shirts. Mark Plot says Tesla outsold Corolla in 2022. I think Model Y outsold Corolla on a revenue basis, on a total dollar value basis in 2022. I think Corolla still sold more units than Model Y in 2022, but I'm not sure. What specific date for Tesla Robotaxi 2024, 5, 6, 7? What specifically gives you confidence now since the past 4 years he's always said next year? I don't have a specific date for Tesla Robotaxi. I don't claim to be able to see the future like that. I don't think it matters. Honestly, I think if Tesla doesn't deliver Robotaxi till 2028, it doesn't change my forecast for 2030. Like, I'm looking at 2030. So it doesn't matter whether it matters in the medium term whether they deliver Robotaxi sooner. But if Tesla keeps pumping out vehicles in greater and greater volume and the Robotaxi network goes live in 2028, and you're thinking about 2030, it doesn't matter. Because there's the same number of Robotaxis on the road either way. Because the problem with producing the Robotaxis isn't that they need more money, it's that they need more supply chain. So, my gut hunch is, and like, this isn't educated, this is just my feel, is that Tesla FSD is going to cross a significant threshold this year. I'm not saying it's going to be Robotaxi ready this year. I still think it might be Robotaxi ready this year. This is one of those things with machine learning, is it just improves. It improves it, like it's not there, it sucks, it's not there, and all of a sudden it's like, what the hell happened? It's like going up, and there's this line that it has to pass through to become really good. And it's going up and it's getting closer and closer to this line, but you don't see it. And all of a sudden it shoots through. And you don't know. The problem is you don't know where the line is. So there's this line somewhere, and FSD is getting better and better and better and better. And the minute it passes through that line, the next week it's better and it's better and it's better. And, the line is better than human, right? But we don't know exactly where the line is to be equal to human or better to human. Just So Faithful says Robotaxi is just a cherry on top. No, Robotaxi is... So I think we see Robotaxis in operation later, towards the end of this year or sometime next year. But I'm habitually over optimistic about all things Tesla, so take that with a massive grain of salt. Can there be a massive grain of salt? So, Robotaxi is contingent on regulators, says Matt Sankow. Yes and no. The state of Florida legalized self-driving cars and Robotaxi networks, and I'm not clear that they need to overcome some sort of regulatory framework to operate. But we have existing Robotaxi fleet operations from Waymo in Chandler, Arizona, and Waymo and Cruise in San Francisco. And I think there's one or two other places. So once Tesla's ready for Robotaxis, they'll probably go to places that have an existing regulatory framework, run the Robotaxis in those networks, demonstrate their effectiveness and safety and low cost, and then start going to other places and saying, hey, Florida, we want to do this here. Hey, Las Vegas, we want to do this here. And my gut hunch is that, once they demonstrate that it works in one place, some places will adopt it quickly, and some places will be slow. Marty Party says Hardware 4 probably gets started once Model 3 Highland starts hitting roads. I don't think... First of all, I'm not convinced that there is a Model 3 Highland. I think that there will be an update to Model 3 with, single-piece castings maybe structural pack down the road. I don't think so. What do I think about the Highland update of Model 3? I think it's very likely that Tesla will modernize their factories where they make Model 3 and make them with front and rear castings, because it's just a no-brainer that the cost of production is lower when they do that. Now, it may be that I sometimes wonder if Model 3 is going to be obsoleted by the next generation vehicle. I don't think so. But Model 3 Performance, if you've never driven it, I have driven a Model 3 Performance, but not in a long time. I think Model 3 is a fantastic driving car. Robotaxi needs NHTSA if it crosses state lines. I don't know that that's true. I don't know what the role of the NHTSA or the NTSB is in regulating self-driving cars, because those organizations were created to regulate existing tech. This is new tech. I don't even know if they know how to regulate it. Snappy says when Gary Black lists all his 12-month catalysts on Twitter, he's confirming he is a short-term trader. He gets too much attention, in my opinion. Thanks, Warren, for keeping positive real. I just want to say this. I agree with that sentiment that putting 6 and 12-month catalysts is not... It feeds... There's an audience that wants it, and it feeds that audience, and they eat it up. It doesn't matter how many times he's wrong, by the way. He can be wrong 8 out of 10 times. He can brag about the 2 he got right, and they eat it up. No one, here's my contention. This is my logical conclusion, so you can take this for what it's worth. No one can make accurate predictions of short-term stock prices. Anyone who could make accurate predictions of short-term stock prices would be a trillionaire in a week. And there are no trillionaires. So no one can predict accurately short-term stock prices. And if you can't predict them, then you can't really explain them. So even my explanation, well, I think, there was margin selling pressure that pushed it down. And once you reached the bottom and started going back up, the margin selling pressure was gone. I don't know. Am I right? I think I'm right. There's a lot of speculation what the Idra machine is going to be used for in Texas. In Texas, it's for Cybertruck. I don't think that's a question. I don't think that's speculation at all. The Idra machine that's going to Asia was a question. There's an Idra 9,000 ton gigapress that's going somewhere in Asia, and that's an open question. Who's using that? Could Tesla discontinue any models? I think that Model S and Model X are no longer important for Tesla's mission. And I think Tesla could decide we're going to use that space where they manufacture S and X to manufacture something that's more valuable. The practical reality is they make profits on S and X. And thank you, Wayne Gonzalez, for joining the channel as a basic member. I just want to mention this really quick since Wayne did that. I have people support me on Patreon, on Locals, and as YouTube channel members. And generally speaking, supporters get early access to some of my videos. They get some exclusive content. They get a discount. There's a discount for supporters for the t-shirts on elonbits.com. It's not a huge discount. It's a couple bucks, but hey, a couple bucks is a couple bucks. And I'm doing more on the Locals platform than anywhere else. And if you're going to join the YouTube channel, you get more benefit by joining at the exclusive content level rather than the basic level. The basic level is just a very low price, and it wouldn't be fair to the Patreon supporters and Locals platform supporters if the basic members on YouTube got the same benefits for less. That's why I do it that way. So I appreciate the basic member support, but it's better to be an exclusive content member, although it does cost more. How did my date go? Oh, okay. So I was supposed to... All right, now I'm going to tell a story. This is a personal story. So this is going beyond the scope of the video, but I had a potential date lined up for Friday night, last night. Somebody that I met on Twitter was going to be coming down for a conference, and we were going to have a drink in Orlando on Friday night. And her work plans changed, and she couldn't come to the conference. And so we didn't have the date, but there's something positive that happened that I won't go in depth on that I'm very excited about. So there is a date coming. And I'm going out line dancing and I'm meeting women. I'm not dating anybody from line dancing or anything, but I'm making friends anyway. And there's been some like get-togethers where it was sort of like a date, but not really. So let's see. So yeah, the Daily Lie is warrenredlick.locals.com. Patreon is patreon.com/warrenredlick. There's links to all this in the description below. Jay Kim says the Fed will probably wreck the party this week. Yeah, I want to stress this again. Like, I think that I'm very optimistic about the future of Tesla, and I'm going to do a lot more about that in tomorrow's live stream. But I think that we need to be really conservative about this year. I think there's a strong risk that something could go wrong this year. Force majeure event, the war gets worse, or supply chain problem, or something happens with China, and recession's worse than we thought, and the stock could go to $60 a share. So I'm going to say this. I said this earlier in the video. I'm going to say this now. I do not recommend buying on margin. I do not recommend playing option games with any significant part of your portfolio. I do have less than 1% of my portfolio invested in like 5 Tesla call options, because I just felt like it. I think I might be back I might be back positive now. Has she got a womb? Yes, the woman that I'm supposed to have the date with does have a womb and is interested in having children. Why didn't you buy more Amazon in the past, and those similarities make it easier for you to find Tesla? That's a great question, 472 Water. I love this question. I've talked about this before. I found Amazon in 2013. I recognized the potential of an investment in Amazon in 2013. I realized I was addicted to Amazon Prime, to buying stuff on Amazon. And I figured other people are going to get addicted like I am. And so I bought some Amazon stock, and I consider it my great, and it like 12x'd before I sold some or most of it. And I consider it my greatest investing mistake because I didn't buy more. I think I bought $5,000 or $10,000 worth of Amazon stock, and I should have bought like $50,000 or $100,000 worth of Amazon stock because I saw it, like, just like I see Tesla. And so the lesson is, having seen that experience with Amazon, because I became convinced that Amazon was going to take off, and so I bought some. And when it started rising, I didn't follow it closely. I didn't buy more as it was rising. With Tesla, I became convinced this is a great opportunity. I started buying in 2016 when SpaceX started landing orbital rocket boosters. And then I started buying more stock, and as the more convinced I became, I started buying more and more and more. And I invested a heck of a lot more in Tesla than I invested in Amazon. So still not enough, I suppose. Can I show a drawing of the pod car? I might be able to do that, actually. It's not a genuine drawing, but I have a pod car drawing. This is an artist's conception. Where is it? Do I have it? Maybe I don't have it. Oh, this is it. This it? No, that's not. That's way too big. I don't think you can see that. Let me get rid of that. I definitely have something. Where is it? I don't know what I did with that. Here? No, I don't know what I did with it. I had it. But it's not real anyway. I don't know what I did with it. So, all right. So we got about an hour. I didn't want to go any longer. Honestly, this was just, I think the point, to be clear, let me just rehash the critical point here, that Ross and Gary got a lot wrong. Have they gotten a couple things right along the way? Sure. But the Twitter overhang thing was nonsense. The PR thing, the advertising thing was nonsense. The board of directors attacks were just absolutely awful and wrong and unfair to the board of directors, who were doing a great job for Tesla. The idea that Tesla needs a retail investor representative on the board is just total nonsense. And fundamentally, their failure to understand that they can't introduce their push that Elon should get out of Twitter and get back into the factory and get working on Cybertruck and the Generation 3 vehicle, the $25,000 to $30,000 car, which itself is a mistake because it's going to be a $20,000 car. They didn't understand the battery constraint and the fact that you can't all of a sudden make a million of some other vehicle. And if you come out with a second vehicle, then you have to share the batteries across two different vehicles. And so you can't maximize your production of the vehicle that's really humming, right? So that's the big mistake. All right, so I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you to the moderators. Please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please support me on the Locals platform, warrenredlick.locals.com, on Patreon, as a YouTube channel member. Links in the description below. Check out my other videos. Please like this video, share, and subscribe. Thank you to the moderators, Mark Plott, Mark Potocnik, and I don't see if Jim Whitehead's there or not, but if he's there, thank you. And thank you all so much for watching.